was going for a job interview under the title of Marketing and Campaigns, good salary, and they seemed great on their supposed site. From applying to getting an interview, it was around 2 working days max, so pretty quick. I'm a 5'4" woman in her early 20s, and I'm fairly attractive and in good shape. I feel that this may matter for the context of the story, so it's the only reason I mention it. So today I was walked to the interview place, and as soon as I got in it, I had this feeling in my gut that something was just not right. The offices were actually one small room where there was a reception corner, a desk of some sort, a tiny makeshift waiting area, and then the interviewer and the candidate next to it. And there was no privacy, and all the candidates could match the others' interviews. But the place looked weird too, and barely furnished. There were branded purchases bags like Chanel and Pandora along the wall, and there were some vague printed accolades on the walls. The only staff there was a woman at reception and a woman interviewing, both attractive, young, and well-dressed. At this point, I just felt something was wrong, so much so, in fact, that I took a picture of the office to jokingly send to my group chat. To me, it seemed like an attempt to seem fresh or modern and appealing to the young average woman. The interviews were only 15 minutes each, with no opportunity to ask questions. I watched 2 girls go before me, both of which had nothing in common academically or experience-wise to me. Again, a bit weird for the position and the salary. When it was my turn, I sat through a confusing 15 minutes of vague info on them wanting to grow us into senior management, and it sounding less and less like what I applied for. I was shown a sketchy-looking presentation on a MacBook, which, after it was on the last slide, was quickly turned away from me. In this presentation, they made big claims about who they had worked for, but no info on what they actually had done and what the role was. They apparently were interviewing 45 women today, then shortlisting 5 for an intro day this coming Monday, where they'll decide to hire you on the day. I still made sure to give a good interview, but immediately knew that I didn't want a job because something just felt wrong. When I got out and I had time to process, I realized the office I'd been in, which had apparently been there for months, had no online paper trail and no signposting on the front to suggest that their company was even there. I also looked at what I thought was their pretty nice and trendy site, but suddenly there was a new paid ad on Google under the supposed brand name that I searched for, but for a different MLM-style company with a different name with a £250 joining fee. This site had poor English and barely worked. It was definitely sketchy. The phone number that they'd given me was seemingly a dummy, as that number was for a totally different and unrelated company in the area. The woman that I had met had very common names, and when they emailed me about the interview, the boss that I had met had a totally different name too, despite it being her doing the emails. Also, the second lot of interviews on Monday that they had mentioned in the interview, they gave no information on it, apart from it being from 11:30 a.m. to around 8:30 p.m. or later, and there would be 5 chosen candidates. And so, I decided to call the police non-emergency number when I got home and gave them as much info as I could. The guy on the other end took it very seriously and explicitly told me to not attend anything they invited me to, as this whole situation seemed really strange, and they are currently investigating. Funnily enough too, I got a call back an hour ago now from the company congratulating me and inviting me back for the day on Monday. I asked them to send me the info so that I could consider and send a response after dinner with family. And in the email they sent, they told me to go back to the office that I was at today, but there was no other staff there or space for a work environment, and to bring a warm coat to meet clients. Now, this was a bit weird because it's very hot in my part of the UK currently, and why would they introduce people who don't even have the job yet to their clients? If they just moved here from London a few months ago, the need for a warm coat would still seem irrelevant, and it suggests that you'd be going to a different location, which led me to believe that something is definitely seriously wrong with this. Part of me will admit that I was tempted to go and film this thing to see what happens, if at best it was a scary 10-hour hard sell on MLM or something worse. However, due to the police advice, I politely declined their offer, citing my other genuine interview on Tuesday as my reasoning. I also made a friends-only Facebook post about the situation in case any of my local friends are applying for the same thing, and I am otherwise trying to stay low on this on my public profiles. To be honest with you guys, I think I just had a run-in with, at minimum, a very creepy MLM scam, or at worst, a potential human trafficking scam. But the town is near to one of the UK's biggest crossover points to France, meaning in a few hours you could be anywhere. I am shaken, and my gut feeling is my best reminder that I may have escaped a very scary situation. Please be safe out there, guys. This story happened to me in late February of 2019, 4.5 months from the time that I'm writing this. I am a military collector and specialise in World War II rifles, rare ammo and bayonets. It's relevant to the story, I promise. So, I live in North Carolina, and every year, I and a friend or two will make the pilgrimage to Kentucky for a large military show with hundreds of tables of museum-grade items. This year, I had taken one good friend of mine named Andrew, and nobody else was free that weekend, so it was just the two of us. Come that Sunday, we were on our way back home and had just crossed the West Virginia state line. We just passed through the Big Walker and East River Mountain tunnels, for those who know that area. We came out of the second tunnel and went down a large hill, but whilst coming back up from the dip, I had noticed that as I pressed the gas, my RPMs would spike to red zone, but it had no effect on my speed. At this point, I threw my hazards on and coasted as far as I could, which was just up to an exit. We sat there, stopped for roughly 5 or 10 minutes trying to diagnose the problem and figure out how to make it home. As we had figured, it was an obvious transmission issue, but no clue as to what exactly it was. We let the car rest for a bit when a vehicle came whipping right in front of us. It was a gold-toned minivan with a South Carolina palm tree sticker in the back shield. At this point, 3 doors open, 3 people begin to jump out, but 2 pulled their legs back in whilst one older man who appeared to be in his late 50s and likely smoked a lot, walked up to my window. He began to say that he saw us pulled over and, because he believed in Jesus, had to help us out of the goodness of his own heart because it was so cold and windy out, which it actually was. I told him that we were on our way back home to North Carolina when he proceeded to say that he was from Statesville, NC, and that they were all going home and just passing through. The man was far from alarming himself and seemed honest at first. He then said that his son was the car guy and could help. At this point, he signaled to the van that he came from, and 2 people got out. One of them, a very fat redneck-looking woman, and a skinny guy in his late 20s who was presumably his son. The younger guy was well-spoken, but definitely set off some red flags in all kinds of ways. He had sagging pants and prison tattoos covering his neck and his hands. Both guys were standing by my window talking, but just as that happened, the woman began to wave on everybody that attempted to pull over and help. And this time, the older man had begun to contradict himself and slipped out of character more and more. He told me that they were on their way back to their shop that was 5 minutes away. Red flags were going off more and more, but I still had no reason to not take their help if they could offer it. And that's when I went and grabbed my code reader from the trunk so that we could have a more or less official diagnosis. The older guy followed me around back and saw my rifles that I bought laying aside my luggage. I brought the reader to the front and plugged it in. The son had said that he could clear the code if it was an electronic issue and it would let us go on our way. But the code would not erase, and the son asked if he could sit in my car since he had nothing on but a loose t-shirt and was obviously cold. My buddy Andrew was still in the passenger seat, so I told him that he may sit on the edge to break the wind. The son then proceeds to start my car, gun it in reverse, forward and reverse again. During this, I for sure thought that my car and Andrew were off to whatever crack house these obvious drug junkies had come from. He stopped the car though, got out and said to follow them after begging me for cash so that they could get home. I told him that money was tight at the moment, but offered $20 as more or less an appeasement. Andrew and I had about 1 minute of sitting there talking and planning for any issues that may arise. During this, we kept expert communication without the junkies knowing, and whilst going over the plans and talking about what had just happened and how sketchy they were, I hear my back door open on my side and turn around to see the older guy had climbed into my back seat. I pull my knife from my door just in case, as he says that he wants to make sure that we get there. And thank God that my car was still not working as well. We coasted down the hill and had just enough energy to pull into the garage or gas station off the exit. The van pulled in as well, and the woman asked what the deal was. I explained that the car wasn't working and parked us in the lot. As soon as I exited my car, the older guy has the woman begin to hound me for cash. I explained that we didn't have a lot, which did not register with them. I went inside to buy transmission fluid, and all three of them came with. I had Andrew stay in the car, and as soon as we stepped foot inside, the woman began talking about locating an ATM for me to withdraw $200 for them. Keep in mind that nothing that had happened with my car working had a thing to do with them. I did pay the son the $20 I promised him, however, because he did give me honest advice of what fluid to buy and how much. The older guy then started to say how pathetic it was that I could not pay them for the work they did. Afterward, they all split up, and I called Andrew and told him to lock up and take my other knife from the door in case they went to him and where there were no cameras or something. Fortunately, they never went near Andrew, and instead the older guy yelled at the other two that it was time for them to go. It was 2 hours later, after a very generous young mechanic drove us around to a few shops to get the right fluid and helped us by supplying tools and a funnel to add to it, that we finally got home safely after that. That definitely may not have been the ending had the car worked fine all the way to their shop, or if I had not had my buddy Andrew, who was critical during the entire thing, or had he not seen what I was carrying, based on the rifles in the trunk. At the time, I had no pistol on me, but after that, I bought a new Glock that goes with me everywhere because you just never know when those things will happen. I worked graveyard shift for a long time, and one night about 25 years ago, I'd finally caught up with my night's work, but was unable to back up the work that I had done. So I decided to clock out and drive to the Walmart to buy a box of new discs and leave the receipt for our bookkeeper so she could reimburse me. A few days after this incident, though, we learned that our computer had a virus that was corrupting the floppy disks that we were using. Go figure. So, you get the picture, though. Floppy disks for backup, no cell phones for most of us, and it was a primitive time. So, I arrived at the Walmart at about 3 a.m., went in and found the discs. I decided to visit the toy department as it was early November and I wanted to get Christmas gift ideas for my son, as well as several nieces and nephews too. Well, while I browsed, I felt someone watching me, and I looked around and there were 3 men nearby, and all were just kind of staring at me. I looked back at them long enough to fix their appearances in my mind and went on looking at toys. I was in no hurry, though. I was off the clock and wouldn't need much time to back up my work after I got back to the office, so I continued to look around, even strolled through housewares for a few minutes. Every time I looked over my shoulder, though, those 3 guys were just close and watching me. After the second time, alarms were sounding in my head. They were repellent looking with pasty pale faces, as if they spent all their time indoors eating junk food, and their eyes were cold and hard. But what disturbed me the most, though, was the way that they were dressed, but much too warmly for the weather that night. Even though it was November, it was about 55 outside, and I was perfectly comfortable in a jean jacket. These guys were in heavy coats, suitable for sub-freezing temperatures, though, and they had been buttoned to their necks inside the store. The only reason that I could think of for that was that they were hiding weapons beneath their coats or something. I finally headed toward the cash register, thinking that if no one else was leaving the store when I did, that I would ask the cashier to call security and request an escort to my vehicle. As I reached the register, I saw my stalkers standing just inside the doors. They muttered among themselves for a moment, and then they exited the store. As I was paying, a man and a woman lined up behind me. I had seen them shortly before I neared this register, and they didn't seem to be paying any attention to me. I moved to the area between the registers and the doors and stood waiting for the couple, fiddling with my buttons and blowing my nose and whatnot. And when they moved towards the doors, so did I, staying just a few steps ahead of them. I had parked not far outside, and I reached my vehicle quickly. and the stalkers were sitting in a car that was parked nose to nose with my pickup truck. I hopped in, locked the door, and then I sat back and stared at them. The couple that I had used as my unwitting escorts walked past me and the stalkers and got into a car a few spaces away. They left, and after a minute or two, the stalker driver said something to the others, started the engine, and pulled away. I watched as they slowly left the parking lot, then ascended the nearby interstate highway overpass and took the entrance ramp. Only then did I start my engine, and I took my time looking around as the engine warmed. I continued along the street for a couple of miles past the interstate, then pulled into a dark lot behind a strip mall, turned off my lights and engine and waited, watching the few vehicles that passed. I wanted to be certain that I was not about to lead those guys to my office building, which was isolated and, at that hour, usually deserted, except for me. And after my pulse slowed to normal, I restarted the truck and returned to work. I'm a female, but I'm almost 6 feet tall and weigh about 175 pounds. I know that my size has protected me from a lot of mayhem over the years. I was also armed that night too, and I carry a loaded Smith & Wesson, as well as a speed loader, which is like an extra cylinder full of bullets. But still, I probably would have been no match for 3 determined assailants, that's for sure. This experience, though, definitely cured me of my nonchalance about running errands in the wee hours of the morning and validated my conviction that any time that I get the feeling of someone's eyes crawling over me, it's wise to look around and find the reason. Because, about 3 months later, my husband and I were watching the local evening news, and they showed the photos of 2 of the stalkers, because they were wanted for armed robbery. I had the strangest encounter happen to me this year, and this happened to me on my college's campus in January. So, my boyfriend and I try to go to the gym every day. Sometimes we go in the morning, and sometimes we go really late at night. And well, one night we decided to go at around 1 a.m. The gym is a 24-hour Gold's gym. And anyway, the gym is walking distance to my boyfriend's apartment too, so we walked to the gym together this fateful night. During our walk, I don't remember what it was about, but we got into an argument. When we got to the gym, I was in no mood to work out. I was upset, and my boyfriend and I were pretty much ignoring each other at this point. After 10 minutes or so, I left without telling him, which I know was a stupid idea, but we lived just a few blocks down the street, so I didn't think too much of it. It was nearly 2 a.m., it was cold, and I was by myself. I remember being kind of creeped out because not only was it late, but it was a winter break and campus was barren. But I was mad and I'm stubborn, so I just kept walking. At about 1 block away from my boyfriend's apartment, though, I felt a presence next to me, and I looked to my left, and standing underneath a tree with branches that hung low, in front of an abandoned building, was an overweight Caucasian male, completely in the nude. But that's not all, because to accompany his birthday suit, he had on one of those damn Mardi Gras masks that cover half your face. I was stunned for a second. I thought he was going to do something, but he didn't. He just kind of stood there, and after we made eye contact, he said hi and waved. And that was it. Didn't move, just stood there in the dark, naked, as he watched me walk by. Even though I was scared and shocked like never before, I refused to give him a reaction. I looked up, looked at him, stopped for a second, looked away, then just kept walking the same pace. After I knew I was out of sight, I walked the rest of the way back to the apartment. During the short walk between the weirdo and my destination, I phoned my boyfriend and told him about what had happened. 3 minutes later, boyfriend barged through the front door and we told his 2 roommates what happened. They all decided to run out and hunt him down with broken bottles and kitchen pans. But they never found him and I never saw him again. Apparently too, this guy has made multiple appearances around campus trying to scare students or something. And one student actually managed to snap a photo of him that I, hopefully, still have. I work a summer job at a community pool as a pool monitor. Basically, that means that I take care of the pool by skimming it, shocking it, calling for resources, checking people in, etc. My shift starts at 11, so around that time I was skimming the pool. Eventually, this silver car pulled up and parked in the parking lot beside my car. I kind of dreaded people coming at that time because usually that means people get in while I'm still skimming, which stirs the bugs and debris around. But then I saw the guy was only going to the mailboxes. But the community's mailboxes are all in one place, like how they are in university or whatever, and it's right next to the pool parking lot. So relieved, I just continued my job. After the guy got his mail, though, he pulled the car around right next to the gated entrance to the pool, and then he entered. Each resident has a key card, so I'm guessing he was a resident or someone who knew one. Thinking that he was just some guy wanting to swim, I asked him to sign in on the book. There's a book that asks residents to list things like the resident's name, address, time they arrived, keycard number, all that stuff. I saw that he did, and so I returned to working, but then I heard him start walking toward me. He started out politely at first, saying, "Excuse me, but I just wanted to tell you that I think you're cute and was wondering if you'd like to get a drink sometime." I'm happily taken, so I informed him as much. But then he said something about my boyfriend not having to know, and I still said no thanks, but he just kept going, and he got more and more vulgar under the guise of just being up front. He said things like, "I'll be honest, I really want to have you, and I would beat your insides out." Apparently the threat just didn't register, so I just kept brushing him off, but I'm kinda affable by nature, so I was kind of just laughing it off like, "Nah, dude." He said that we could go into the bathroom right quick and no one would have to know. I told him no, that I'm a virgin. I know, probably a mistake to say in hindsight, right? And then I said that I'm not interested in doing it with a stranger. Then he asked me if I'd ever been with a black guy before. I'm white, he's either black or mixed or something, and if I'd ever seen a black guy's dick. I said no, and that I simply wasn't interested in him. Things were escalating though, and again though, I was saying it in a way that was sort of friendly because by this point, I only felt a bit exasperated by his efforts. To be fair, I have dissociation issues, so that could explain why I wasn't really reacting like I probably should have. He said that he wanted to show me his dick real quick in the bathroom, and after I finally said no for the millionth time, he finally just said, "Alright, goodbye," and then just left. I had only been complaining to my mum just because I was telling her how my day went, and she was like, "That's sexual harassment, and you need to report that to your boss." After that, I was kind of like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And the more I think about it, the more I think about how wrong things just could have gone. I mean, he was really aggressive by the end of it, and I was just kind of shaking it all off like it was nothing, which was kind of stupid, I must admit. So yeah, hopefully the guy never comes back, but if he does, I'll be sure to take different steps the next time. G'day mates, it's Busta here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you would like to help me out, then please go ahead and watch another video by clicking on a card on the screen. As always guys, thanks for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.